Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chant and be happy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Whoa, what a wonderful month. It's the month of Kartik, and all around the whole planet, all over the world, devotees of Krishna are celebrating his pastime with Mother Yasoda. His naughty pastimes. They have very, very deep significance. Why would this pastime be celebrated for a whole month all around the world? Why? There's so many pastimes. Killing Agasura, even the Rasa Lila pastime. But this one, with Damodar, with his mother, Yasoda, is especially significant. I want to take a look at the special significance of the pastime. Going a little deeper. Krishna willing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this particular song, they call them songs, but they're not really songs. I mean, they are songs, but they're actually prayers. And who has written this one? It's Damodarashtaka. And who has written it? I have the words here. But they don't say who has composed this. Let me find out. I'll find out. I'm on it. Here, Google knows. Google knows who composed Damodarashtaka. Krishna. Who wrote Damodarashtaka? Oh, Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas has written Damodarashtaka. Vyasadeva. For thousands of years, devotees have sung Sri Damodarastakam, especially in the revered month of Kartik. These 8 verses mark the profound blossoming of Sri Satyavrata Muni's love for Damodar as he prays. Please appear before me in your beautiful eternal form as a young cowherd boy and grant me the perfection of life. The true meaning of this prayer remained mostly hidden until 1500s, when Sanatana Goswami wrote his elucidating commentary. Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj wrote a supplementary commentary to make the essential meanings even more accessible to us. So this was posted by the followers of Narayan Maharaj. So yeah, it's just as I suspected. There is a deep esoteric meaning to which I'd be interested to see that was mentioned there. Who wrote the commentary? Sanatana Goswami. All right, I'm going to try to find that at some point, but not right now. Hey, I have a whole month to do it, right? Okay. So what I want to do is just recite the prayer, try to sing. It's not for entertainment, so it's not some just like, musical performance. And I guarantee it won't be particularly musical. But I try to go through the prayer here. There are 8 stanzas. They're actually really beautiful. There's a melody, very popular melody. And it's being sung every day in the temples now for 1 month. And devotees come and they make some offering. They offer a flame, a little candle. But I want to read the English first, so that when I do the verse in Sanskrit, I at least have some idea what I'm singing. So the translation for the first stanza is: To the Supreme Controller, who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistening earrings swing to and fro, who manifested himself in Gokula, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat in fear of Mother Yasoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances. So that's the translation. And the verse is Namami Sparam Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yasoda Biyolukaladavamanam Param Rishnamatnyantad Ruchagopya. Second verse. Upon seeing his mother's whipping stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again, and with his 2 lotus hands. His eyes were fearful, and his breathing quick, and as Mother Yasoda bound his belly with ropes, he shivered in fright, and his pearl necklaces shook. To this Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances. Rudantam mahurnetra yukmam rijantam karam bojayukmena satankanetram muhusvasakampa trireka kanta stita graiva damodaram bhaktibadam. Number 3. Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Krishna's babyhood drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. To the devotees who are attracted only by his majestic aspect of Narayan and Vaikuntha, the Lord herein reveals, I am conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. To the Supreme Lord Damodar, my obeisances hundreds and thousands of times. Idrik Svalila Pirananda Kunde Swagosham Nimajantam Akyapayantam Tadiyeshi Tagneshu Bhaktair Chitatvam Puna Prematastam Satavritti Bande. Translation of the 4th verse. O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature of Paramatma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enacted in my heart. And the Sanskrit for that is Param Deva Moksham Na Moksha Vidam Va Na Chanyam Vrineham Vare Sadapiha Idam Te Vapurnata Gopala Balam Sada Me Manasya Virastam Kimanyai. Translation to the 5th verse. O Lord, the cheeks of your blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, have become reddened like bimba fruits due to Mother Yasoda's kisses. What more can I describe than this? Millions of opulences are of no use to me, but may this vision constantly remain in my mind. And the Sanskrit, Idam te mukambojam atyantanila ritam kundalai snigdarachaisha gopya muhushchumbitam bimbarakta darame manaya virastam malam lakshalabai. Translation to the 6th verse. Oh, unlimited Vishnu, O Master, O Lord, be pleased upon me. I'm drowning in an ocean of sorrow, and I'm almost like a dead man. Please, shower the rain of mercy on me. Uplift me, protect me with your nectarine vision. Namo Deva Damodaranta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukkha Jalabdi Magnam Kripa Dristi Vristyati Dinam Bhatanu Grihane Shama Magnam Edyaksha Drishyai. Translation to number 7. O Lord Damodar, in your form as a baby, Mother Yasoda bound you to a grinding stone with a rope for tying cows. You then freed the sons of Kuvera and Manigriva. Of Kuvera, Manigriva, and Nalakuvara, who were cursed to stand as trees, and you gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please, bless me in the same way. I have no desire for liberation into your effulgence. And the Sanskrit for that is Kuveratma Jaubada Murtyaiva Yadvat Tvayamochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritocha Tata Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha. And the last verse, number 8. O Lord, The entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound by a rope by Mother Yasoda. To this rope, I offer my humble obeisances. I offer my obeisances to your most beloved Srimati Radharani and to your unlimited pastimes. The Sanskrit for that: Namaste stu damne spura dipti damne twadiodarayata visvasya damne Namo radikayai twadiya prayai Namo nanta lilaya devaya tubhyam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Jai. It was written by Srila Vyasadeva. Dvaipayan Vyas. Hare Krishna. Jai. Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda. Now there's a link here. Now I want to take a look at this link. It says, where is it? Oh. Indra Prabhu, very rasic disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who inspired and inspires so many, especially the younger generation, to take this chanting as their life and soul. And it was a very unfortunate, untimely disappearance. He disappeared in Vrindavan. There was an accident with propane. His sense of smell, he didn't have a sense of smell. And he couldn't tell that the little propane stove in his quarters, very humble quarters in Vrindavan, that the propane was leaking. And he wanted to make a little offering for his shaligrams and his deities there. And when he tried to ignite the little stove, it blew up. He was found prostrate, offering obeisances to his deities on the floor. So he must have lit the stove, and it didn't explode right away because the room was filling with the gas. And he was making his offering, bowing down, praying. And there was the explosion, and he was gone. I should be so fortunate. But we don't have his association now. He was not that old. I mean, he's a senior disciple, but anyway. So this is a recording of him chanting. Namam Ishvaram Satchit Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokole Prajamanam Ishvaram Satchit Anandarupam Ishvaram Satchit Anandarupam Yasat Kundalam Gokule Prajamanam
Gantato Nutya Gopya.
So, you can hear his mood. I'm sure it gets more, when he's chanting, it tends to get a fever pitch. So, I'm going to go to one of the later part of the chanting, because he chants slowly, and it's a long clip. So, here's later on. So, Krishna, he takes us slowly, and then it reaches a feverish pitch. Hare Krishna. Jai. Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I don't know, what do we want to do today? We honored Damodar. You want to read a little bit more about Srila Prabhupada's adventures? Yeah. Is that his letter to Ghandi? Prabhupada's preparing to come to the Western world. He's still working as a pharmacist, but things aren't going all that great, but he's still doing it. And Bhaktivedanta has told him he needs to take sannyas, but he's not in a position to do it right away. But he's wondering, why am I working so hard? My spiritual master's institution, which I was supporting economically, is in tatters. They've sold my spiritual master's printing press to pay for the court fees so they can fight legal battles, who gets what. And my family members, they don't help me. They give me no support. They don't support me in the business. I have my business, Abhay Charanday and Sons, and they don't help. They're sitting in the house, eating and sleeping like women. And I'm having to do everything. So they don't support my business, and spiritually they don't support me either. Not at all interested in devotional service. So why am I working so hard? But he continued working anyway for a little while. He wasn't in a position just to drop everything. So even while he's working, he's translating, he's typing, he's preparing the Bhagavad Gita that we now have. He's preparing this. He started preparing this after the war, World War II, the late 1940s and 50s. He couldn't devote full time to it, but whenever he had a minute, he would do work on it. And his notes were interspersed with his ledgers, his bookkeeping for his business. Something would come, and it'd be, he'd turn the page, and in the same book that he was doing his accounts and his ledgers, there'd be a whole purport to a Bhagavad Gita. So here, Prabhupada still has some affection for Ghandi, and he Prabhupada tried to reach out to him even now in his old age. As a young man, Abhay had been a follower of Gandhi's. This is 6 volumes of biography, the life of Srila Prabhupada, his activities. And this is about halfway through the first volume, before he comes to the West. Abhay had a special feeling for Ghandi. Of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had later convinced him to engage exclusively in devotional service. But now Abhay felt his old friendship for Ghandi, even though Ghandi was a towering figure of worldwide fame, and Abhay unknown both to Ghandi and to the world. Boy, Prabhupada would outdo Ghandi. My goodness. On December 7th, 1947, Abhay wrote to Ghandi from Kanpur. Ghandi was living at the Birla Mansion in Delhi, where large military forces throughout the city discouraged Hindu-Muslim rioting. Gandhi's secretary, P.R. Lal Nayar, described Ghandi at this time as the saddest man one could picture. The men he had led in the struggle for Indian independence, Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, and others, had taken leadership of the nation, and Gandhi, with his doctrines of nonviolence, unity, and agrarianism, was now with odds at them in many ways. He feared he was becoming an anachronism. Okay, I kind of can tell what that means, anachronism, but let's see what it is. What's an anachronism? Hey Google, what's an anachronism? I think it's like a dinosaur, you know. A thing belonging or appropriate to a period other than that which in it exists, especially a thing that is old-fashioned. An act of attributing a custom, event, or object to a period to which it does not belong. Yeah, a dinosaur. So there's some discussion by leadership in ISKCON, senior disciples, that ISKCON's focus of preaching is become an anachronism, and there's some discussion on that. There's all kinds of discussions. Chant Hare Krishna. That's never an anachronism. You can always do that, and whatever else is going on. It's always on like the political field, anachronism. So, he feared he was becoming a dinosaur, and anachronism. His former colleagues admired him, but rejected his leadership. All his programs, Hindu-Muslim unity, nonviolence, upliftment for the poor, although praised throughout the world, were failures in the India of 1947. On a recent visit to a Muslim refugee camp, a crowd of Muslims who surrounded his car had cursed him, and at a public prayer meeting, a Hindu crowd had shouted him down and ended his meeting when he had attempted to read from the Koran. So he's trying to cause, mutual appreciation, and he read from the Koran, and the Hindus they didn't want to hear it. They just made so much noise he couldn't even speak. At 78 years, Ghandi was physically weak and melancholy. In all likelihood, Abai's letter would never reach him. Abai knew it. Sending a letter to Ghandi would be like putting a note in a bottle and sending it to sea. It would arrive in the flood of mail, and Ghandi would be too busy to see it. But Abai sent it nonetheless. Dear friend Mahatmaji, this is the letter, please accept my respectful namaskar. I am your unknown friend, but I had to write you at times, and again, although you never cared to reply to them. I sent you my paper back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me you have very little time to read the letters and much less for reading magazines. I asked for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply to this. Anyway, as I am your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am writing to you in order to bring you to the rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like your good self. Hare Krishna. I tell you, a sincere friend, that you must immediately retire from active politics. If you do not desire to die an inglorious death, you have 125 years to live as you have desired to live, but if you die an inglorious death, it is no worth. The honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of your present lifetime were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. But you must know that all these honors and prestiges were false, inasmuch as they were created by the illusory energy of Godhead, called Maya. By this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you were false to them. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendship and honors obtained thereby were but creation of Maya, and therefore they are always temporary, or false, as you may call it. But none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, know the truth. So this kind of reminiscent of Dhritarashtra's position in his preoccupation with seeing that his sons inherited the kingdom. Not that he was actually ill-motivated because his sons weren't qualified. But toward the end of life, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, he was a dinosaur. And he was living, all his sons had been killed, the kingdom had been turned over to Yudhisthira and the Pandavas, like it was supposed to. But Yudhisthira was maintaining his uncle, Dhritarashtra, and his aunt, Gandhari. And Dhritarashtra was living, it said, like a household dog in the house of the Pandavas who had killed all his sons. And he was living there. And it was a terrible situation for Dhritarashtra. And Vidura, his stepbrother, saintly Vidura, enlightened him and said, "You're old now. You're living in a house like this. You need to prepare for leaving. You need to go on pilgrimage. Get yourself ready. Do some austerities and some penances. Try to elevate yourself." So not that the situations are exactly the same, but here's Ghandi. He's in a situation where the Hindus are mad at him, and also for trying to bring Hindu-Muslim unity when all they're doing is fighting. And the Muslims are angry with him because they don't want the Hindus. So he's, whatever else he was able to do in life, it was from another age. So he felt like he was a dinosaur. He was an anachronism. That he had no relevance to the present times. And he's old, and he's very unhappy. So here's Prabhupada, like Vidura, trying to enlighten Dhritarashtra. You need to actually get onto the spiritual platform. Leave this politics. Leave it. Get on the spiritual platform. I've tried to approach you several times, and I wasn't able to get through. In Prabhupada's letter, he doesn't know if this will get through or not. But this is how Prabhupada was thinking. Maybe it'll get through. But I have to write the letter. I have to try. So he's trying to enlighten Ghandi. So the biographer continues here. A sadhu is not supposed to flatter, but to cut. This is the basis of his friendship, that he cuts away the illusion of the materialistic person. Mahatma Gandhi, forsaken by his friends, bitterly disappointed at the outcome of the long, hard struggle for Indian independence, and apprehensive about the future, had been reduced to a position in which he might be able to realize that his friends and work were ultimately illusory. Thus, it was the perfect time for him to comprehend Abhai's message. So the letter continues. Now, by the grace of God, that illusion is going to be cleared, and thus your faithful friends like Acharya Kripalini and others are accusing you for your inability at the present moment to give them any practical program of work, as you happened to give them during your glorious days of non-cooperation movement. So you are also in a plight to find a proper solution for the present political tangle created by your opponents. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious death as Mussolini, Hitler, and Lord George met with. The biographer, I don't know how Mussolini, Hitler, and Lloyd George died. I'd like to find out. Maybe later I'll take a look. The biographer continues, for years, Abhay had wanted to approach Mahatma Gandhi with this message. In fact, he had written before, although it had been of no avail. But now he was convinced that unless Gandhi got out of politics, he would soon die, an inglorious death. That Gandhi was remaining active in politics rather than preaching devotional service put him in need of warning. Abhay was writing to save a friend. Actually, it says Mahatma Gandhi was 78. He should have retired. Whether he was successful politically or unsuccessful politically, at 78, you need to get out of doing politics or business or whatever it is you're doing, and focus on going forward spiritually. So whether Gandhi was a success or a failure at 78, it's time to get out. And Indian culture is aware of that. They were aware of the varnas and the ashrams. They were aware. But he's hanging on. He's still hanging in there and still wants to be the big cheese politically. and everything's cut off. He's lost all his friends, all his power, all his potency, and his plans, they didn't come to fruition. His lifelong struggle, he was in jail for years to try and get now India's independent, and it's a mess. So the letter to Mahatma Gandhi continues. You can easily understand as to how some of your political enemies in the garb of friends, both Indian and English, have deliberately cheated you and have broken your heart by doing the same mischief for which you have struggled so hard for so many years. You wanted chiefly Hindu-Muslim unity in India, and they have tactfully managed to undo your work by creation of the Pakistan and India separation. You wanted freedom for India, but they have given permanent dependence of India. You wanted to do something for the upliftment of the position of the Bangis, but they are still rotting as Bangis, even though you are living in a Bangi colony. They are all therefore illusions, and when these things will be presented to you as they are, you must consider them as God sent. God has favored you by dissipating the illusion you were hovering in, and by the same illusion you were nursing those ideas as truth. So the biographer gives a little explanation here. Abai dutifully attempted to inform Gandhi that there was nothing absolute within the relative world. Ahimsa, or non-violence, must always be followed by violence, just as light is followed by darkness. Nothing is absolute truth in the dual world. You did not know this, Abai wrote. Neither you ever cared to know this from the right sources, and therefore all your attempts to create unity were followed by disunity, and ahimsa was followed by himsa. Abai pointed out that Gandhi had never undergone the standard practice for spiritual advancement, namely accepting a bona fide spiritual master. Although Bhagavad Gita declares the necessity of accepting a guru in disciplic succession, Gandhi was well known for listening to his inner voice and for extracting ideas from various writers like Ruskin and Thoreau and mixing them with teachings from the New Testament and the Gita. Had Gandhi approached a guru, said Abai, he would not have become bewildered within the sphere of relative truth. Yeah, this mix and match. We see some devotees have taken it upon themselves to extract ideas from wherever and mix them all up in a big concoction and then preach the truth with this smorgasbord. It doesn't usually end very well. It can work for a little while, but it's not going to actually be a solid platform for eternity knowledge and bliss. It's not a solid platform. It's very tottering. Hare Krishna was listening, and was famous for listening to his inner voice. Hare Krishna. So the letter continues. In the Katha Upanishad, see, this bona fide spiritual master actually puts the disciple in touch with the inner voice. But without the shelter of the bona fide spiritual connection coming into disciplic succession, then there's a lot of voices. And it's very misleading. But the external manifestation of the inner voice is the spiritual master's voice. And when they correlate, when they agree, then you know you have the actual inner voice So Gandhi didn't have that, but he had a loud inner voice. But there was nothing for it to be validated. He had no validation for the promptings of his inner voice. Whatever his mind came up with, that's an inner voice. Dangerous path. So Prabhupada's letter to Gandhi continues, in the Katha Upanishad it is ordered that one must approach a bona fide guru who is not only well versed in all the scriptures of the world, but is also the realized soul in Brahman, the Absolute, in order to learn the science of absolute truth. So it is instructed in Bhagavad Gita as follows. Tad vidhi pranipatena parirasnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina tat pradarshana. 434. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively. Render service. The spiritual master can impart knowledge to you because he has seen the truth. The letter continues. But I know that you never underwent such transcendental teaching except some severe penances which you invented for your purpose, and you have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with relative truths. You might have easily avoided them if you had approached the Guru, as mentioned above. So the biographer interjects here. Recognizing Mahatma Gandhi's godly qualities and austerities, Abai requested him to employ his moral elevation for surrendering to the absolute truth. Abai urged him to get out of politics immediately. The letter continues. But your sincere efforts to attain some godly qualities by austerities, etc., surely have raised you to some higher platform, which you can better utilize for the purpose of the absolute truth. If you, however, remain satisfied with such temporary position only, and do not try to know the absolute truth, then surely you are to fall down from artificially exalted position under the laws of nature. But if you want really to approach the absolute truth and want to do some real good to the people in general all over the world, which shall include your ideas of unity, peace, nonviolence, then you must give up rotten politics immediately and rise up for the preaching work of the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita, without offering unnecessary and dogmatic interpretation on them. I had occasionally discussed the subject in my paper Back to Godhead, and a leaf from the same is enclosed herewith for your reference. I would only request you to retire from politics at least for a month only, and let us have discussion on Bhagavad Gita, and I am sure thereby that you shall get a new light from the result of your discussions, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of the world at large, as I know that you are sincere, honest, and a moralist. Awaiting your early reply with interest. Yours sincerely, Abai Charan Day. So Gandhi was in a position where he could greatly influence India and the world, although he was being overshadowed now. But by taking shelter of Krishna, he could come out of that and do some very, very significant preaching work. Something like George Harrison was a very popular musical figure, and he stayed in his position as a musician and a popular figure. But he did wonderful service for introducing people to Krishna consciousness, and by his personal example also, because he was chanting and he was hearing from he had meetings with Srila Prabhupada, he supported, gave donations, did things. So he used his position, or actually by remaining in his position and surrendering to Krishna, Krishna used him. So Prabhupada's making this appeal to Gandhi. Please, Now you could really do something significant. Okay. There was no reply. A month later, Gandhi announced that he would fast until death unless India made a payment of 550 million rupees to Pakistan, a previous condition of the partition agreement. At first, Hindu refugees from Pakistan demonstrated outside Gandhi's darkened room, saying, "Let Gandhi die! Let Gandhi die! Let Gandhi die!" But as he fasted, each day closer to death, he aroused the heartfelt concern of the nation, and the government leaders repaid the money to Pakistan. Then great crowds approached him chanting, "Let Gandhi live! Let Gandhi live!" Meanwhile, Hindu-Muslim violence continued. On January 30th, the day after he had drafted a new constitution for the Congress Party, Gandhi took his evening meal, worked at his spinning wheel, and then walked towards his evening prayer meeting and was shot 3 times in the chest. He died crying out the name of God. "Hey Ram!" I think that's what happened to Ravana when he was killed by Ramachandra. He died going, "Ram!" Anyway, Abhai's letter of the previous month suddenly read like a prophecy, but it had not been read by the person for whom it had been intended. When the directors of the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial National Fund invited suggestions on how to commemorate Gandhi's life and work, Abhay wrote to them in simultaneity to Vallabhbhai Patel, India's Deputy Prime Minister, proposing the Gandhian way to use the funds. So this is a letter to Vallabhbhai Patel, how to use money put aside for a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. This is a letter. Gandhi's whole life was dedicated to the service of humanity at large, with special interest for raising the moral standard. His later activities show that he was equal to everyone, and all the people of the world knew him more or less as a spiritual leader, not just a mere politician. Devotion to Godhead was his ultimate aim, and when I say that his sacred memory should perpetuated not in the ordinary way, but in the Gandhian way, I mean that fitting respects to his memory will be done in the following manner. Abhay wrote of a Mahatma Gandhi rarely described. He wrote of Gandhi as a Vaishnava. Despite his pressing political activities, Gandhi had never missed his daily prayer meetings in the evenings. Even at the time of his assassination, he had been on his way to attend his daily kirtan. Abhay stressed that it was because of Gandhi's regular participation in congregational prayer that he had been strong in his work to raise the moral standard of humanity. Gandhiji, minus his spiritual activities, Abhay wrote, is an ordinary politician, but actually he was a saint among the statesmen. Abhay wrote that it had been Lord Chaitanya who had originated the congregational chanting of the names of Krishna and Ram, and his followers, the 6 Goswamis, had left a wealth of literature for discussion and understanding. The Memorial Fund Board should take this lesson from Mahatmaji's practical life and develop it on a large scale. Therefore, one fitting memorial to Mahatma Gandhi would be to institute daily congregational readings from Bhagavad Gita. When people's spiritual instincts were kindled by daily prayer meetings, then they would develop the higher qualities in the character. Prabhupada's always trying to preach. So even now with Gandhi, he tried to engage Gandhi. Now Gandhi's gone, he's trying to glorify Gandhi in such a way that people have access to Harinam Sankirtan. Abai had a second suggestion. Gandhi was known for his attempts to enable lower classes to enter temples. In Noakhali, he had installed the deity of Radha and Krishna for the ordinary man to worship. Although this was generally taken as a side issue of Gandhi's work, Abai took it as the essence that Gandhi's was a theistic movement. Abai explained that although there were hundreds and thousands of temples in India, they were not being properly managed, and therefore educated citizens were neglecting them. In the original Vedic culture, the purpose of the temples had been to nurture spiritual culture. If the temples of India could be reorganized as vital spiritual centers, then the disturbed minds of the day could be trained for life's higher duties. Such education and practice, Abai wrote, can help man in realizing the existence of God, without whose sanction, according to Mahatma Gandhi, not a blade of grass moves. Yeah, I heard an interesting discussion on a little historical perspective of the recent Acharyas. Bhaktivedanta Thakur saw that the followers of Lord Chaitanya were not really qualified. They had fallen into a lot of apasampradayas and then also sahajiism, just doing all kinds of nonsense in the name of chanting Hare Krishna, just material things. And the temples here, this is 1947, I noticed when I went to India, many of the temples were very, very dirty, and they weren't kept very nicely. And so here Prabhupada is saying that intelligent people, educated people, are not attracted to that. They won't look to that for spiritual guidance. It has to be clean and timely, and there have to actually be spiritual teachings going on, which Prabhupada saw that that wasn't the case for many temples in India. So the discussion on a historical perspective was in Bhaktivinoda's time, a similar situation, in that the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were not being presented so that intelligent, educated people would be attracted. And by his preaching and his holding his sanghas and his writings, then intelligent people started to take notice. And also he had a high government position, which brought some respect in and of itself. But there was no Hare Krishna movement. There were no brahmacharis. There were no Hare Krishna. It just wasn't happening. There was no organized movement, but people were taking notice of the teachings. And then he prayed for Bhaktivedanta to help him establish the structure of an institution that could be suitable for carrying the message out of India into the rest of the world. And Bhaktivedanta did that. He organized brahmacharis, sannyasis, there were grihastas, Prabhupada was a grihasta, and he was engaged. And so he organized the Gaudiya Math into a recognizable vehicle with structure. But after he left, there was a lot of problems and confusion and rivalry, and the unity of it fractured. And there was a mat here and a mat there, but they were different and they didn't agree and they didn't work together. So then Prabhupada carried it forward with his International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It had formed, he was building, so the way the discussion went last night was very nice, was building, each Acharya builds on the Acharya before him. So Bhaktivedanta Thakur had the vision, and Bhaktisiddhanta built on that vision, and then Prabhupada took what Bhaktisiddhanta had managed to form into a vehicle suitable for worldwide preaching. And each one built on the other. This is a really interesting discussion. So they have to say, well, where is it going? You build on the one before. You don't disregard, you build on it. And take it further. Prabhupada said like that. To actually spread the Krishna consciousness movement, devotees will have to be empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to actually spread it. And he said, so until that happens, please just maintain what I've given until there are devotees who are able to actually expand it. To build on what I've given. So just maintain what I've given. Please, just maintain it. Hare Krishna. So the letter about using the funds to memorialize Ghandi, he continues, he also referred to Gandhi's Harijan movement, which most people saw as Gandhi's humanitarian effort to grant equal rights to untouchables whom Gandhi has recognized as Harijan, people of God. Abai stressed that this was also an essentially spiritual aspect of Gandhi's life. But rather than simply rubber stamping an untouchable as Harijan, Abai argued there must be a systematic program for elevating people of the lower classes. This program was taught in Bhagavad Gita and could best be applied under the guidance of a bona fide devotee of the Lord. Abai volunteered to take up the work on behalf of the memorial board. So here were funds, here was a mission, here was a way to glorify Gandhi. I'll do it. I want to do it. If the board, in attempting to commemorate Gandhi's efforts and accomplishments, neglected the essential spiritual aspect of Gandhi's life, Abai warned, his memory would soon be dead, as has been the lot of other politicians. Perhaps they saw Abai as another opportunist seeking money or as a sectarian religionist. But Abai saw himself as a lowly servant of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Seeing certain Vaishnava qualities in the character of Mahatma Gandhi, Abai took the opportunity to introduce his spiritual master's message to the world. And by so doing, he paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, praising him as a great devotee interested in kirtan, temple worship, and elevating unfortunates to become people of God. So that's what Prabhupada saw. He saw those things in Gandhi. Wow. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Well, that kind of explains how when the untouchables all came to Prabhupada in the Western countries, he didn't see them as untouchables. He saw them as whatever good qualities they had, whatever service they could engage in. That's what Prabhupada saw. I really like, we'll probably hear about it later, when the devotees were sitting in class, early days, Bhagavad Gita class, and I guess they were in New York, in a low class section of New York. They had at least some place to meet. And a street bum came in. You know, they're kind of unclean and tend to have some bad smells about them and so on. And he came in with a great treasure. Now this is, for people that live on the street, what this man offered to Prabhupada was like gold. He came in, he approached Prabhupada's desk, he offered respect, and he offered a roll of toilet paper. For a street person, that's a treasure. A roll of toilet paper, man. You're making a sacrifice. They'll kill each other for a roll of toilet paper, you know. It's which is really funny because when the COVID thing hit, you know, several months ago, the first thing that disappeared off the shelves in all the stores was toilet paper. No one could get toilet paper. I guess they never heard of a little face cloth and a cup of water, huh? Anyway, the first thing that disappeared was toilet paper. So Prabhupada was able to engage everyone. He didn't see a smelly, dirty street person. He saw someone coming with precious, it was precious to them, a gift. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's how Prabhupada saw. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I think he remarked also that he said that his spiritual master had sent all of you, the Westerners, sent outside of India, all of you uncultured people. My spiritual master has sent you to help me in my mission. That's what he saw. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,